You are texting someone within seconds. You're thinking about them before you fall asleep. You're checking your phone every few minutes, hoping to see their name appear. Then, one day, they tell you they like you back, and something strange happens. The excitement fades. The urge to reply quickly disappears. You start noticing small things about them that annoy you. You start wondering if you were ever really that into them at all. Your brain has not changed its opinion of this person overnight. Your brain has changed its relationship to uncertainty. Now, let us actually think about what that means. To understand why interest can vanish the moment it becomes mutual, you first need to understand how your brain treats uncertainty. Your brain has a system built around prediction. It's constantly trying to guess what will happen next, and it releases a chemical called dopamine, not simply when something good happens, but when something good happens that your brain did not fully expect. This is called reward prediction. When an outcome is uncertain, your brain pays closer attention because uncertain outcomes carry information. Will they text back? Will they seem interested? Will they laugh at your joke? Every unanswered question keeps your attention locked on that person because your mind is trying to resolve the uncertainty. This is why the early stage of liking someone often feels so consuming. You're not simply enjoying their company, you're running a prediction engine that has not yet settled on an answer. Psychologists studying attraction have found that uncertainty about whether someone likes you can actually intensify feelings of attraction, sometimes more than clear mutual affection does. In research on this topic, people told that a potential partner's feelings were unclear reported thinking about that person more and feeling more drawn to them than people told the person clearly liked them. The uncertainty itself was doing psychological work, keeping the reward system engaged because the brain had not yet reached a resolved answer. Once someone tells you they like you, that uncertainty finally collapses completely. There is no more mystery left to solve, no more ambiguous signal to interpret, no more emotional puzzle keeping your attention hooked. For some people, this creates a quiet but real drop in psychological arousal. The chase, in a sense, was part of what your nervous system was responding to, not necessarily the person alone. This does not mean your feelings were fake. It means part of what felt like desire was your brain's uncertainty response, and that response naturally quiets down once the uncertainty is gone. There's a related concept worth understanding here called the scarcity principle. Human beings tend to place higher value on things that feel limited or difficult to obtain, and lower value on things that feel freely available. This principle shows up across many areas of psychology, not only romantic attraction. When someone's affection feels uncertain or hard to earn, your mind may unconsciously treat that affection as more valuable simply because it seems scarce. Once that person confesses clear interest, the perceived scarcity disappears. Their affection now feels available rather than uncertain, and for some people, that shift alone can quietly lower how much value the mind assigns to the relationship, even though nothing about the other person's character has actually changed. It's worth being careful here because research on this topic is genuinely mixed. Some studies find that people rate potential partners as more desirable when those partners appear selective, while others find little consistent effect or find that it depends heavily on context. Psychology rarely offers one clean, universal law that applies to everyone equally. What the evidence does support consistently is the underlying mechanism. Uncertainty tends to increase attention, while resolved certainty tends to reduce it, even if the size of that effect differs from person to person. There's also a subtler cognitive process at play, connected to how people form early impressions. In the earliest stage of attraction, before much real information has been exchanged, people often fill in the gaps with imagination. You don't yet know this person's flaws, their daily habits, or the ways they might disappoint you. In that gap, the mind tends to project idealized qualities onto them. This is sometimes described as idealization, and it can make early attraction feel unusually intense because you're responding partly to a mental image rather than the fully known person. When someone expresses clear interest very early, the interaction can suddenly feel more grounded, which is good for an actual relationship, but it can also puncture that idealized imagining, leaving the attraction feeling smaller simply because it now competes with a more accurate picture. Individual differences matter here, and they matter a great deal. Not everyone experiences this shift, and it doesn't happen equally in every relationship. One major factor is attachment style, which describes the patterns people develop, usually early in life, for how they expect closeness and connection to work. People with an anxious attachment style often crave reassurance, but paradoxically may lose intensity of feeling once they receive it, because uncertainty was partly fueling their pursuit. People with an avoidant attachment style tend to feel uncomfortable with closeness and vulnerability in general, and often experience a stronger pull away from someone the moment that person expresses genuine emotional interest, because closeness itself can feel threatening to their sense of independence. People with a more secure attachment style tend to experience this effect far less strongly, because their sense of safety and self-worth is not as dependent on uncertainty or chasing in the first place. There's another psychological process worth understanding here, called self-expansion. Relationship researchers have proposed that one of the reasons new relationships feel exciting is that other people offer new perspectives, new experiences, and new ways of seeing yourself. Early attraction is often fueled by the sense that this new person represents unexplored potential. When someone expresses clear interest very early, before that sense of exploration and growth had time to build, some people experience the relationship as suddenly feeling finished before it even started, as though the story ended before the interesting part began. There's also a simpler and more familiar process at play, called habituation. Human beings adapt to stimuli that stay the same. Novel experiences activate attention and reward circuits strongly at first, but predictable experiences produce a smaller response over time. A confession of interest can inadvertently signal that the emotional outcome is now settled and predictable. Even if nothing else has changed, the brain may begin treating the situation as familiar rather than novel, and shift its attention elsewhere in search of new uncertainty to resolve. So now put both of these psychological processes together, the uncertainty-driven reward system and the individual differences shaped by attachment style and self-expansion needs, and you get a clearer picture of why this experience feels so confusing. It's not that liking someone was an illusion, and it's not that you're shallow or incapable of real affection. It's that attraction, especially early attraction, is often partly built from ambiguity and anticipation, not solely from the qualities of the other person. When someone removes that ambiguity, your nervous system briefly finds itself without something to chase. For people whose attachment patterns are more anxious or avoidant, that shift can feel especially sudden because uncertainty was doing extra emotional work for them specifically. For people with a more secure attachment style, the drop tends to be smaller because their interest was never as dependent on the chase in the first place. This does not mean people are doomed to lose interest every time someone likes them back. Awareness changes the equation. When you understand that some of what you were feeling was your brain's response to uncertainty rather than a full picture of compatibility, you can pause before assuming the relationship itself is the problem. You can ask whether the sudden boredom is about the actual person and how they treat you, or simply the predictable dip that follows the resolution of uncertainty. Genuine connection is usually still discoverable underneath that dip once the initial novelty response settles down. It also helps to recognize this pattern in other people, not just yourself. Someone who constantly only wants what they can't have may be responding to the same uncertainty-driven reward system running unchecked, without ever pausing to notice it. Recognizing that pattern doesn't excuse behavior that hurts you, but it can help you understand that sudden coldness is not necessarily a verdict on your worth. It may simply be an old psychological reflex playing out in real time. The next time your interest in someone drops the moment they open up about how they feel, pause before you decide the story is over. Ask yourself honestly whether you're walking away from the person or from the mystery you never got to finish.